I don't appear suddenly. It only seems that way to those who look superficially. In fact, I appear when the space is ready to accept me. This man lived in a house where everything had to be visible, controlled, recorded. He trusted screens more than his own presence here. Movement more than sensation. Recording more than the moment. The house was quiet. Not peaceful. Empty. The kind where sound doesn't linger. The cameras worked continuously. The system didn't record any malfunctions. The air seemed empty. I wasn't visible yet. But he was already watching. He sat in front of the screens. The yard was empty. The path was clear. The light from the lanterns was even. The cameras showed a stable image. No noise. No delays. He was not watching out of fear or expectation. It was a habit. To check. To make sure. That's how people sometimes prove to themselves that they are still here. The cameras didn't show me. Human cameras are trained to see movement, appearance, disappearance, change of position in space. I exist differently. I appear in pauses, in those short intervals between frames, where the system doesn't have time to capture anything and doesn't store anything. When the image seems to linger for a fraction of a second, not long enough to be considered a glitch, long enough to create a sensation. He called this place home. It was clean, smelling of ozone and new plastic. The lights turned on automatically. No unnecessary things. Nothing lingered long in this space. Not even him. He was often here physically, but rarely, completely. He was the owner here, but not a resident. I don't come to homes. I appear where presence has become background. A habit. A function. On one screen, the courtyard was empty. On the other, too. But with a delay. Half a second. He leaned closer. Looked closely. The delay disappeared. The images matched again. The system did not detect an error. He decided it was a trifle. I was in no hurry. The movement did not appear immediately. It was not sudden. It was not obvious. On one of the screens, he saw a figure in the courtyard. Himself. He was standing in the room. And on the monitor, he was walking. Without panic. Without sudden fear. Only surprise. And attentiveness. The delay increased. Now it was noticeable. He moved, and a moment later he saw it on the screen. He watched, without looking away. People have long wanted to see themselves from the side. Not a reflection in the mirror, but movement. He set up cameras so as not to miss anything. To be sure that he was there. My voice did not echo in the room. It did not come from the speakers. It appeared there, where doubt arises. In that very pause, where confidence disappears. And that's when he heard. Your cameras are trained to see movement. I exist in the pauses. The voice was even. Feminine. Without warmth. It had no direction. It was impossible to locate. It wasn't a sound. It was a realization that took shape for a moment. He switched screens. 1, 2, 3. They all showed the same thing. He was standing in the middle of the courtyard. Motionless. The cameras did not show the moment when he left the house. Neither did his memory. At some point, it became impossible to tell whether he was looking at the screens or the screens were looking at him. He did not move, and he did not try to understand. He just watched. Time did not stop. It ceased to be perceptible. The screens continued to show images. Smooth. Stable. Without glitches. But something inside him couldn't keep up with this movement. He waited for the image to change. Or for him to change. Nothing happened. And that was the first sign. Until that moment, he had been looking for a mistake. Not a meaning, a glitch. Either the cameras were delayed, or the images were overlapping, or his attention was failing him. People trust technology more than their own perception. But the truth was different. The cameras were not mistaken. They faithfully recorded the body. Heat. Coordinates. They saw him as an object, occupying space. But they did not see what makes a person alive. The moment now slipped away. He saw himself on the screen and realized, there, on the video, was only a shell that continued to walk. And he himself remained in that very pause I mentioned. He began to fall behind his own life. The recording continued. The image was perfect, 4K, 60 frames per second. On the monitor, the man stopped, in the middle of the courtyard. He looked real. But the room in front of the screens was empty. Not because he had left, but because the space no longer had anyone to hold. I don't kill. I don't take away. I just separate movement from what gives it meaning. Form from presence. When a person becomes a function, they become mine. The cameras finally showed the truth. The body is there. But he is not here.